Hello. This topic that we're going to discuss is on keys and rekeying. We currently have a system that we have, let's say, 20 different keys that we use, and we just alternate. We number the keys. We have two different types of keys that our locksmith is using. That is a schlag and a quick set. Now, we have a master set for each type of key. It just depends on what they have at the time because we rekey all of our properties prior to any new tenant ever going into a property. So it gets a little tricky with all of these smart locks. My locksmith does not recommend that we have any smart locks, which I kind of like them, but in a sense, we have to be able to access the property in case of an emergency. And a lot of these smart type of locks will go out a lot easier. They're not as good. But I'm not going to dwell on that. We just kind of take every home with a case by case basis. Now, when we're getting a rekey done, we rekey every tumbler to the same key. That's important to not have two different keys, unless the only caveat or asterisk to that is if they have two different types of locks. Like, let's say they have a schlag lock for the front door and a quick set lock for a garage. That's the only time that we'll generally have those extra, those two different keys. Now, how we create these, the numbering system works out really good because then everybody gets a master set of keys. And in Buildium, we put the key number for that particular property. And in that way, if anybody ever needs to have access to it, they have a key in an emergency. So just to talk a little bit about the rekeying process, we get the property, and let's say it's a new property that we just acquired. We generally will wait until right before a new tenant moves in, if no other tenants have been in that property. So if the owner had lived there prior, we're not as worried about getting it rekeyed right away. Now, if a tenant had lived in there, we have to get it rekeyed just as soon as possible because we don't know who has keys to that property. And we want to make sure to limit any type of, somebody vandalizing or any of that. So when you first get the property, rekey it if a tenant was in there prior, or just go ahead and wait until right before. I don't like to get it rekeyed or put money into the property before getting a tenant placed anyway. So ideally, I don't know who this owner is or if we're going to start doing work and then next thing you know, we're, fired or we fire them. And then all of a sudden we've got to start collecting on bills. I'd rather wait and utilize the money that we get from the tenant that's moving in. So let's just say the owner had lived there prior. We're not really worried about who has the keys. We will go ahead and make a work order to the maintenance department to make a work order. So actually our work orders to the maintenance department are just an email saying, please rekey this property. Here's the lockbox number for the locksmith to get in. If it's one of our properties, then say this is the key number, the previous key number. That way, and also we want them to know if it's vacant or not. The locksmith needs to know if it's vacant. Or if we need to contact somebody, let's say the owner hasn't moved out yet. And well, then we need to say, hey, it's occupied. Here's who's living there. This is their contact information so we can get the vendor out there. When a tenant moves out, I immediately have the locksmith go out there, generally around noon on the next day. Per our leases, we have, uh, they're required to be out at noon on the last day of the month. So I like to get the locksmith out there at noon on the next day. Now it's important to maintain some kind of communication with the current tenant or the tenant that's moving out to make sure that they don't need extra time. So you may want to have the maintenance department check in with them too, or the locksmith, to make sure that they are out, because we don't want to rekey the property if they have not vacated fully, because it defeats the purpose of the rekey. So other than that, nobody can ever rekey. A tenant moving out can't rekey themselves to try to save the money for the locksmith either. We have to get this done by our locksmith and with our key system. I hope I've shed some light on this topic, and have a great day.